Well, hello, everybody. I'm Jim Lockard. It's wonderful to be here with all of you today. I want to extend my appreciation to Dr. Bob Dean. Dr. Bob and I, as he mentioned, came into ministry about the same time, coming up on 30 years ago, although neither one of us looks like we could possibly be that old, I know. And I left what we call pulpit ministry about 8 years ago now, and I've been working primarily in the area of community building and looking at spiritual organizations as community. So that's what I'm here to talk about today is the idea of the beloved community. A term that originates with Dr. Howard Thurman, Dr. Martin Luther King, in building the idea of a worldwide human community where poverty would not be allowed, homelessness would not be allowed, there would be no war, and everyone would be compassionate and loving. And you may have noticed we're not there yet. So the idea is, how do we help to bring this to a reality by each of us in our own local communities, creating the kind of consciousness that allows us to express in that way, so that we can contribute in our own individual ways of being and in community ways of being to creating that kind of world that works for everyone. So I'm happy to be here. I'm in Atlanta for the weekend, and it's wonderful to be here. I haven't been here in quite a while, and I'm looking forward to the rest of my stay here in the States before I go back home to France. So if you can bring up the next slide, that would be great. This quote from Malcolm Gladwell, I think it's important for us in spiritual community. He says or wrote, "If you want to bring a fundamental change in people's belief and behavior, you need to create a community around them where these new beliefs can be practiced and expressed and nurtured." And that's from the book, The Tipping Point. And this idea of being in community. Now, there's a couple of things that you may have noticed are going on in the world. One is the recent pandemic that has not fully run its course yet, obviously, but that has severely affected how we gather, how we do community, not only spiritual community, but all kinds of community. People are working from home more. There's just all kinds of ramifications and effects from this experience. And another thing that's been unfolding over time is something from what a field we call cultural evolution, is that people are moving out of the organized kinds of activities, including organized religion. That attendance for religions across the board in every denomination have declined over time, and that we're experiencing that. So the effect of the pandemic has been in a way to sort of turbocharge that. And it brings up the question of, how do we gather in community? How do we create that space for that kind of support, the support system that we need to fully live our spiritual truth? It's almost impossible to do it alone, because you're out in what we call the real world. You're out in the world where going within and being compassionate and being loving isn't always looked upon favorably. It's looked upon as a good idea, but in practice, we don't really act that way, do we, as a rule? So we need a place to come, to be together in some way, to allow ourselves that safe space to do that kind of growth and development that is so important, to develop our own emotional and spiritual intelligence, to be able to be around people who are on that same journey, although they may be doing it in their own way, to have someone or some group of people that have the capacity to teach us what we need to learn, and to simply be in a place where community allows us to bond together. Spiritual community provides space for things like rituals, for marriages and memorial services and baptisms and things like that are so important to our understanding of ourselves in society and in community. It provides space for us to learn and practice spiritual truths and spiritual techniques and practices, so that we can develop and do our work. It's sort of like you go to the center, or you attend classes, or you watch this kind of a broadcast, and then during the week you practice what you have heard and learned, so that you're able to grow and develop and create the kind of life that you desire. I really believe, my wife and I, Dorianne, has been in this teaching for many, many years. We met, actually, interestingly enough, in 2003, when we were both elected to the board of directors of our spiritual organization. And that's when we met, and we were married a couple of years later. And we both have been practicing this teaching for a few decades now. And I really, if someone says to me, how are you able to live in France? How are you able to make that kind of a choice and have the abundance to do it? I would really say because I practice this teaching. Before I came to this teaching, I didn't have the consciousness of abundance. I didn't have the consciousness that I deserved abundance, that the universe was actually conspiring in my favor as opposed to against me. I didn't get all that. And during the course of my time as a student of this teaching and later as a teacher of this teaching, but you're always a student, um, I was able to develop that sense of myself, that sense of who I am, that sense of who I can be. And I came to like myself better. I came to like the person I was becoming. I came to be able to let go of petty grievances and the need to judge others and the need to look at the world as a reflection of myself as opposed to myself as a being interacting with the world. So Gladwell's idea of the fundamental change in people's belief and behavior, that's what I experienced in studying the science of mind in spiritual community. I changed my beliefs and my behavior changed as a result. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for that recognition, for that ability, that opportunity that was afforded me. I guess my biggest complaint was I didn't find it sooner in my life. But I think that what we do is we find something when we're ready for it. So I've come to accept that as well. And again, my ministry today is working primarily with spiritual communities, in some degree with spiritual organizations, and to help them come to terms with some of the forces, the dynamics that are unfolding in our society today that are affecting how we are able to view and do spiritual community. So can we look at the next slide, please? This is from Jean Shinoda Bolen, one of my favorite authors. You have the need and the right to spend part of your life caring for your soul. It's not easy. To be a soulful person means to go against all the pervasive, prove yourself values of our culture and instead treasure what is unique and internal and valuable in yourself and your own personal evolution. I think this is such a critical idea. Does your life outside of the spiritual community provide you with the support to see yourself and be yourself in that way? And I think for most of us, the answer is probably not. And if it does, it doesn't do it very effectively. So we need the place to come together, whether we're in person or whether we're online or however we do it. We need to be in companionship with others, in what my wife terms as collective virtuosity, where she's a musician and she's working on a book now about chamber music rehearsal techniques and how musicians learn to work together in a time when they're actually playing and they can't say anything to each other. So they learn to communicate non-verbally and they rehearse in such ways that allow them to understand where the other musicians are and what they're experiencing and so forth. And that they become a very tight community of mutual support. So one of the things I love about spiritual community is I get supported and I get to support others where I may be more in a better place or further along the developmental path than someone else. I can reach out and be present for them, even if it's just sitting with them, knowing a higher truth than they can currently entertain for themselves. I think spiritual community can offer what we call safe space, and I define safe space a little differently than others. Some people think safe space is where you should go and never experience discomfort or never be challenged. I think safe space is a place where you can be uncomfortable and be challenged, but be supported in that process. Because we realize spiritual growth doesn't occur except by going through discomfort, going through getting out of a certain mindset and moving into a better mindset, a truer mindset, a more expansive and more deep mindset. And our ego structure doesn't let us do that easily. You know, it's usually after we struggle against ourselves and our perceived notions in order to realize something more powerful and something deeper. She says, the all-pervasive prove yourself values of our culture, where you have to show up and prove to me who you are and prove to your boss that you're worth the money they pay you, or prove to your father-in-law that you're worth, being a partner to his daughter or son or whatever. And that's so much of our lives. I remember, going to school and as a young boy and just feeling like I had to prove myself to everybody. I had to, spend a lot of time guessing what the teacher was thinking so I could give the right answers. And I wanted to be seen by my friends and fellow students in a certain way, so I'd maybe alter my behavior from what would be more natural for me. And we've all gone through that to one degree or another. And on top of that, if your existence and who you really are, your identity has been one of those that is not generally accepted in society, then that has been a heavier burden to bear and a more, well, I'd say a tougher battle to come out, to come forward, to be who you are, and to do that and accept yourself even in the face of others not accepting. I consider myself lucky. My identity is as a straight white male is generally accepted in the larger culture. I know my folks like me, it caused a lot of problems. But at the same time, growing up, I wasn't an outcast because of who I was born as. And I can only imagine what that must be like. And to spend years building up the mindset that I don't belong or I'm not accepted or acceptable. And then the struggle to overcome that. My first ministry was in Fort Lauderdale, and we had a very large community there, up to 1,000 people were members, and a large percentage of that group were gay and lesbian. And I got to experience, as I befriended many of those folks, just what they were going through and the bravery of their experience, and they were so grateful to find a teaching that respected and honored who they were, and a community that did as well. And we did it imperfectly, let's be honest. But we did it. We tried to grow. We tried to do it. Now with Centers for Spiritual Living, our organization, a high percentage of our ministers are from the LGBTQIA plus community. And it's just part of who we are. And it's there's no issue with it. And I think that's a powerful statement in today's culture, that here is a religion that is accepting and open and affirming and continually trying to get better in that regard. So I think that's a community that has a lot to offer. And, I remember one time there were some issues in Fort Lauderdale. Some of our straight members were concerned that some of our gay members were sitting in service with their arm around each other. And it was interesting. They never complained if a straight couple did that. And I went to some of our gay members. They had an organization, and I went to the meeting and I said, "Here's what's going on. What should we do?" And they said, "No. We don't want to be a gay church. We want to be part of a larger community. So we will talk about that." But they said, it's not. And he said, it's not about trying to make someone comfortable. It's about recognizing that if you're showing appreciation for each other and care for each other, we want to encourage that. So how can I speak to that in a way that would work for all of us? And we did that, and the issue just kind of went away. So we are in a religious teaching that is not dogma bound by proclamations from the past, when culture had not evolved to the degree it has today. That's one of the great values of our spiritual communities in New Thought in general. And if you've been around our communities, you know that. So we bring up the next slide. Dr. King, in his speaking and writing about the idea of the beloved community, said, "Our goal is to create a beloved community, and this will require a qualitative change in our souls, as well as a quantitative change in our lives." So just think about that. Think about the meaning of that. You see a picture of him there in handcuffs. I think that represents the idea that to open a culture to full acceptance of everyone in it is a struggle. And maybe it shouldn't be a struggle, but it is a struggle. And we have to be willing to engage in that struggle. Just like we have to be willing to engage in a struggle of our own personal growth to overcome our own internal biases, our own limitations, our own sense of inadequacy, and our insecurities about ourselves and the world we live in. I have come to the conclusion that we are spiritual beings having a human experience and that we have everything we need to live full and rich lives. And I think I'm trying to set an example of doing that, of living a full and rich life and being open and having a wide variety of friends, acquaintances, colleagues, and so forth, and having a rich life to be enjoyed and to at the same time be a contributor to the development of humanity and the development of sustainability and thrivability on our planet. I think this is all part of what it is. And I think Dr. King um, would be both happy that there's been progress since he left the scene and dismayed that the progress has been slow and incomplete. And that's where we pick up the mantle, is to be open, affirming, to connect in a deep and real level. And I realize, here's what I realize. We have to do it with ourselves before we can really do it with another. I can't embrace you unless I embrace myself. So the work of spiritual development is a realization of our divine nature, of our inherent worth, and of our willingness to live lives of compassion and deep positive realization. I think this is where we are, and this is who we are, and this is what our work is. And I think it's best done in a supportive environment with others who can hold us up when we're having a bad day or a bad week or a bad month, and that we can in return hold them up when they're having their negative experience. Because that's part of life, isn't it? Nobody lives a perfect life. Nobody is without trouble. Nobody is without pain or without issues. Yet, all of us have within us a capacity to overcome them, to heal, to move forward, to embrace, and to enjoy. And that's my message to you today. And I hope you find a way to do it. And the next slide, if you're interested, you want to take a screenshot of this or something, is my connection information. I'd be happy to hear from any of you, or if you want to see what I post on my blog or whatever the case may be, that would be fantastic. And I hope to see some of you this afternoon at our workshop, which Dr. Bob will tell you about in a little bit. Thank you all. I love you. I appreciate you. And I am enjoying being with you today. Namaste.